Morning light crept through the cracks of the small apartment window, painting soft gold over a pair of worn-out shoes lying beside the bed. The janitor, Elias, sat quietly on the edge, wrapping tape around the torn soles. The motion gentle, almost ritualistic. Each strip of tape whispered the story of another long day ahead. Some people start their mornings with coffee. He started his with silence and tape. Elias slipped his feet into the patched shoes, wincing as the cold floor pressed against his skin through the thin fabric of his socks. Outside, the city hummed with a kind of indifference that only the poor understood. He buttoned his faded uniform, took a deep breath, and looked at the small drawing taped to the mirror. His daughter's crayon version of him smiling under a bright sun. Elias, softly. "Let's keep walking, sweetheart. One day, Daddy will get there." He stepped into the street, mist curling around his breath, shoes squelching against wet pavement. The grand building loomed ahead. Clean glass, polished marble, men in suits, everything he wasn't. As he approached the service entrance, he slowed. Across the street, a man sat on the sidewalk shivering, his bare feet red against the morning frost. Elias stopped mid-step. The man's clothes were tattered, but his face, young, sharp, held something lost and searching. For a moment, Elias stared, feeling the pinch of his taped shoes. He looked down, then back up. The world suddenly felt smaller. 2 men, 2 lives, the same cold ground between them. The janitor took a step closer, breath trembling. The stranger looked up, eyes hollow yet familiar, and Elias realized he wasn't just looking at a man without shoes, but a reflection of himself. Elias paused at the edge of the sidewalk. The man on the ground trembled, pulling his knees close for warmth. His feet were bare, skin cracked and bleeding from the cold concrete. The city moved around them, heels clicking, cars hissing by, steam rising from vents. But in that small circle of stillness, it felt like time had stopped. Elias's breath clouded the air, and for the first time in a long while, he hesitated. He looked down at his shoes, patched, taped, and barely holding together. But they were something. He flexed his toes inside, feeling the little warmth they gave. His eyes shifted back to the stranger's frozen feet. Some choices come with no applause, only the quiet sound of your soul deciding who you are. Elias knelt slowly. Elias, softly. "Here, take these. The floor inside's warm enough for me." The man blinked, startled. Stranger. "Sir, I can't. You'll freeze." Elias smiles faintly. "Cold's nothing new." He untied the laces with trembling fingers and slid the shoes in front of the man. The stranger hesitated, but Elias nodded firmly. The gesture wasn't pity. It was recognition. A silent language between 2 men who had both known hunger, cold, and invisibility. As the stranger put the shoes on, his eyes glistened. Stranger, whispering, "Why would you do that?" Elias. "Because someone once did it for me." The stranger looked up, voice shaking. Stranger. "What's your name?" Elias tightened his coat and looked away, eyes fixed on the towering building ahead. Elias. "No one important." He stepped barefoot toward the service door, the concrete biting at his skin. Behind him, the stranger called out, but Elias didn't turn. The stranger watched him disappear inside, whispering to himself, "No one important, huh? We'll see about that." The echo of Elias's bare footsteps followed him down the marble hallway like a soft, haunting rhythm. Each step left a faint smudge of dust against the polished floor. A quiet rebellion in a place obsessed with perfection. He pushed his mop bucket forward, the wheels squeaking, the smell of bleach rising in the chilled air. The lobby lights shimmered above, reflecting off glass and gold fixtures that cost more than his year's pay. In a world built on shine, it's always the unseen hands that keep it clean. He dipped the mop into water that was already turning gray. As he wrung it out, a cluster of executives passed by, their laughter sharp, shoes clicking like applause for themselves. One of them wrinkled her nose, murmuring, "He should wear proper shoes. It's unhygienic." Elias kept his eyes down, his mop moving in slow, deliberate strokes. His feet burned against the cold marble, but his posture stayed proud. Elias, softly to himself. Clean floors, clean heart. That's the job. Across the hall, a young intern lingered, watching him. The boy hesitated, then whispered, "Intern." "Sir, doesn't that hurt?" Elias smiles faintly. "Only when someone notices." The intern looked puzzled, then walked away, guilt in his eyes. Elias returned to his rhythm, humming a low tune, something his daughter once sang while coloring on the kitchen floor. The sound echoed faintly in the empty space, human warmth against corporate chill. Just as he began polishing the last panel, a sharp voice cut through the silence. "Manager." "Elias, this isn't a slum. You're lowering the building's image walking around like that." The mop froze mid-air. Elias turned, calm but tired. "Elias, maybe it's the image that's already too high to see the floor." The manager's jaw tightened, but Elias said nothing more, just bent down, wiped a small streak of dirt, and kept cleaning. From the hallway corner, unseen, a man in clean borrowed shoes watched quietly. The same stranger, his eyes unreadable. The hum of the vending machine was the only sound in the break room. Faded fluorescent lights buzzed faintly above, washing everything in tired gray. Elias sat alone at the corner table, his lunchbox open, 2 slices of bread, a few crumbs of cheese, and a bruised apple. He took a slow bite, then paused, noticing Miguel, the younger custodian, staring at an empty lunch bag. "Elias," softly, "didn't bring food today?" Miguel shrugs awkwardly. "Rent went up again. I'm saving what's left for the kids." Without a word, Elias tore his sandwich in half and slid it across the table. Miguel, No, I can't." Elias, "Eat. It tastes better shared." Miguel hesitated, then smiled gratefully, taking a bite. For a moment, the world outside, the polished suits, the marble floors, the hierarchy, all disappeared. 2 tired men, breaking bread in silence. On the locker behind Elias hung a child's drawing, a stick figure holding a mop, standing under a yellow sun, the words, "My hero, Daddy," written in red crayon. He reached for it gently, tracing the edges with rough fingers. For him, love wasn't loud. It was drawn in crayons and taped to metal. He closed his eyes, and the scene melted into memory. A flashback, a small girl ran barefoot through wet grass, laughing. Elias chased after her, shoes in hand, calling out, "Elias!" Younger, laughing. "You'll catch a cold." Daughter. "Then you'll carry me, Daddy." He scooped her up, spinning as the sky turned gold. Daughter. "Promise me we'll always walk on soft grass again." Elias, smiling through tears in memory. "One day, sweetheart, one day." The buzz of the lights pulled him back to the present. Cold linoleum under his bare feet. Half a sandwich gone, half a dream left. Elias folded the drawing carefully and whispered, "I keep my promises." But just outside the break room door, the manager's voice carried, angry, impatient, calling his name. The hallway smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and rain drifting in through the revolving doors. Elias was deep in rhythm. Push, twist, rinse. His motions steady and practiced like a silent dance. Each sweep across the floor felt like a heartbeat, quiet, consistent, unseen. Then, a sharp snap. The mop handle cracked in half. The wooden edge splintered into his palm, drawing a thin line of blood. Elias winced, gripping it tighter for a moment before sighing. Even the tools that serve too long eventually give up. People aren't so different. He walked to the supply closet, holding the broken handle. Inside, shelves were stacked neatly with new mops, but a small white tag read, "Manager approval required." He knocked gently on the office door. Elias. "Sir, my handle broke. I'll need a replacement." Manager, without looking up. "Already past budget, Elias. Used the spare from last month." Elias. "It split last month too." Manager, snapping, "Then tape it. That's what you people do, isn't it?" The sting wasn't just in his hand. Elias nodded quietly and turned away, blood marking the edge of the door as he left. Back in the hall, he wrapped the handle with duct tape, the same tape he used for his shoes. Elias, murmuring, "Everything breaks where it's weakest." He returned to his cleaning, barefoot against the cold tile. The mop squeaked awkwardly, bending with each push. Across the corridor, executives hurried past without seeing him, or maybe pretending not to. He kept working until a soft reflection flickered in the wet floor. Polished shoes. Elias froze. The shoes stopped just inches from his bucket. Slowly, he looked up. The man standing before him wasn't a manager. It was the stranger, clean, calm, wearing the same shoes Elias had given him. Their eyes met. Neither spoke. The stranger tilted his head, almost smiling, and said quietly, "Still walking barefoot?" For a moment, the world around them faded. No voices, no footsteps, only the faint hum of the ceiling lights reflecting off polished floors. Elias straightened slowly, mop dripping water at his side. Elias, hesitant. "You again, stranger," smiling faintly. "I told you those shoes were a perfect fit." The stranger's voice was calm, composed, too calm for a man who had been shivering on the street a few days ago. His coat was tailored, his posture confident. Elias couldn't place him. Something in his eyes held warmth. And wait, the hall shimmered between them like a mirror. One man barefoot, another polished, both standing in the same light but belonging to different worlds. Elias. "You shouldn't be here. Security doesn't like strangers." Stranger. "They didn't stop me." He smiled, glancing toward the office doors. "I wanted to see how a man can give away his shoes and still walk taller than everyone else." Elias frowned, unsure if it was mockery or respect. Elias. "I just did what anyone decent would do." Stranger. "Then I hope there are more like you, but somehow I doubt it." The stranger turned, walking slowly down the hallway. The sound of his footsteps, the shoes Elias once owned, echoed like ghosts of his kindness. Elias stood frozen, heart thudding, until the stranger vanished into the elevator. The doors closed softly, leaving behind the faint scent of leather and mystery. Moments later, the manager's phone rang sharply inside his office. He picked up, frowning. "Manager." "Yes? Who? The janitor? Why?" He glanced toward Elias through the glass window. Manager, confused. "Understood. We'll keep an eye on him." Elias continued mopping, unaware he'd just stepped into the sightline of power. The elevator light blinked red on its ascent. Top floor. And somewhere above, the stranger whispered to his assistant, "He doesn't know who he just helped." By noon, the building had changed tempo. What was once quiet efficiency now hummed with unease. Secretaries whispered near the coffee machines, managers lingered longer by the elevators, and even the security guards stood straighter than usual. Something, or someone, was coming. Elias pushed his mop through the hallway, pretending not to listen, but whispers travel faster than water across marble. Secretary 1, hushed. "The new building owner's arriving this week." Secretary 2. "I heard he's coming disguised, wants to see how people really behave." Manager, passing by. "He'll eat anyone alive who's lazy. Tell your teams to smile." Elias kept his eyes down, the mop gliding between polished shoes. He didn't care for rumors. His world was small. Floors, buckets, and promises kept in silence. But that word, disguised, lingered like static in his mind. When power hides its face, truth tends to show its own. By afternoon, the tension thickened. The janitorial crew scrubbed harder. The air reeked of polish and pressure. Miguel leaned toward Elias, whispering, "Miguel? What if he's already here, watching us?" Elias, smiling faintly, "Then I hope he likes clean floors." They both laughed quietly, but Elias's heart wasn't light. He thought of the stranger, the man with his shoes, and a strange chill brushed through him. As he dumped the dirty water into the drain, he heard his name again. Not shouted, Whispered. Voice. From the stairwell. Elias! He turned sharply, but the stairwell was empty. Only the faint echo of his own breath. The light flickered once, and the hum of the building seemed to deepen, as if the walls themselves were waiting. From the top-floor window, unseen, the stranger watched him on a security monitor, smiling quietly. Soon he'll know, he murmured. The night crew had gone home, leaving the building hollow and humming. Only the soft squeak of Elias's cart broke the silence as he made his rounds through the dim corridors. The city lights outside flickered across the marble, casting ghostly reflections that followed him with every step. He stopped by the locker room and opened his metal door. A small light buzzed above, revealing a handful of worn belongings, a lunchbox, an old towel, and a folded photograph tucked into the corner. The picture was creased and torn at the edges, its colors fading with time. It showed a young family, Elias, his late wife, and their little daughter, standing near a park fountain. His wife's arm was looped around his, laughter frozen mid-frame. Half the photo was ripped where his wife's face used to be. Sometimes grief doesn't scream. It just sits quietly in a folded photograph. He brushed his thumb across the empty space. Elias, softly. You'd laugh if you saw me now, Rosa. Still mopping, still patching everything that breaks. His voice cracked slightly. He sat on the bench, barefoot, tracing the photo edges like he could mend time. A faint sound came from outside, footsteps stopping by his door. He quickly slid the photo back and stood. When he opened the door, the hallway was empty. Only a small cardboard box sat on the floor, wrapped neatly in brown paper with a single note taped to it. Elias picked it up, hesitating. The note was written in clean handwriting. For the man who gave warmth. He opened it slowly. Inside lay a pair of brand-new leather shoes. He held them in disbelief, eyes glistening. They were his exact size. Elias looked down the long, empty hallway. No footsteps, no figure. Just the faint sound of an elevator closing somewhere above. The next morning came dressed in soft sunlight, spilling through the janitor's window and landing directly on the brown box sitting beside his bed. Elias stared at it for a long moment before touching it again, half expecting it to vanish like a dream. He unwrapped the paper slowly. The scent of leather rose, clean, new, and faintly sweet. The shoes were the color of rich coffee, their laces perfectly tied, soles untouched. He ran a thumb across the stitching, feeling the smoothness, the foreignness of something made with care. His reflection wavered faintly on the polished surface. For the first time in years, he didn't feel invisible. Just small, human, and seen. There's a strange kind of guilt in receiving what you once gave away. He slipped his feet in. They fit so perfectly it made his throat tighten. They were warm, soft inside, like walking on memory. He took a few hesitant steps across the room. Every sound the soles made against the floor felt like a new beginning, knocking quietly. Elias, softly to himself. Feels wrong, but good. At work he kept glancing down, self-conscious. The shoes gleamed too brightly against his faded uniform, as if they didn't belong in his world. Miguel whistled low. Miguel. Look at you, Jefe. Someone finally noticed you. Elias, smiling. Just old debts finding their way back. But mid-morning, a voice cut through the chatter of staff meetings. The manager's voice, trembling with urgency. Manager. Everyone, gather up. The new building owner's arriving any minute. Silence swept through the halls. Elias's heart skipped. His gaze drifted toward the elevator doors as they chimed. A familiar rhythm of footsteps echoed from the marble, confident, steady, and wearing the same kind of shoes as his. The elevator doors opened with a soft chime that sliced through the building's tense silence. From inside stepped the stranger, now dressed in a tailored navy suit, hair slicked back, a quiet authority in his every movement. The man who once trembled barefoot on the sidewalk now looked like he owned the ground he walked on. Gasps rippled through the staff. The manager hurried forward, his tone instantly bending. Manager. Mr. Whitlock, we didn't expect you so soon. Stranger, coolly. I prefer to arrive unannounced. That's when people show who they really are. Elias froze mid-swipe of his mop, heart pounding. He didn't need to ask who the man was. The way everyone shifted told him enough. The stranger's eyes scanned the crowd, sharp, observant, unhurried, until they landed on Elias. The world seemed to narrow. The buzz of phones, footsteps, chatter, all dissolved into silence. The two men faced each other across the glistening floor. One in uniform and bare humility, the other in power and polish. Yet something flickered between them. Recognition, quiet gratitude, an unspoken debt neither could name. Some truths don't need to be spoken. They're seen in the pause between two heartbeats. The stranger, Mr. Whitlock now, tilted his head slightly, the faintest smile ghosting his lips. Whitlock. Good work on these floors. They're spotless. Elias, nodding. It's what I do, sir. Whitlock. Yes, I remember. The words hit harder than a shout. Elias blinked, unsure if he imagined it. Whitlock turned away, addressing the gathered employees with crisp authority. Whitlock. Let's see how well this place runs when kindness, not hierarchy, cleans the corners. The staff applauded nervously, not understanding. Elias stood still, pulse thrumming, as Whitlock passed close enough for their shoulders to almost touch. Whitlock paused mid-step, murmuring just loud enough for Elias to hear. You walk like a man who's carried others' burdens. Don't stop now. The conference room gleamed with tension. The air smelled of coffee, polish, and quiet fear. Executives lined both sides of the long glass table, whispering as Whitlock, now unmistakably the new owner, stood at the head. His presence filled the space effortlessly, not loud but absolute. Elias lingered near the doorway, holding his cleaning cart. He wasn't supposed to be there, but the manager had barked, "Stay put till we're done." So he stood in silence, his reflection shimmering faintly in the glass wall. Whitlock. Before we begin, let me ask one thing. His voice was even, low, cutting clean through the murmurs. Whitlock. Who among you remembers the name of the man who cleaned this floor today? No one spoke. The silence was sharp enough to hear pens tremble, eyes darted. The manager cleared his throat. Manager. Sir, I don't think that's relevant to the inspection. Whitlock, smiling thinly. That's exactly why it is. He looked around the table, gaze steady. Whitlock. This building shines, but only because someone unseen works until it does. Some of you step over him every morning. You think leadership means looking up, but it starts with looking down, with seeing who keeps your world steady. Elias's hands tightened around the mop handle. His heart thudded so hard he feared they could hear it. Power doesn't always raise its voice. Sometimes it whispers truth into rooms built to ignore it. Whitlock turned slightly toward him, then back to the stunned room. Whitlock. Sometimes the richest man in the room walks barefoot. He ended the meeting there, leaving a silence thick enough to drown in. The staff exchanged bewildered looks as Whitlock brushed past Elias, his voice soft as he said, Whitlock. Join me for lunch tomorrow. Elias blinked, unsure he'd heard right, but Whitlock was already gone, leaving muddy footprints where the marble used to shine. Elias stood frozen in the hallway long after the meeting ended. The echo of Whitlock's words, "Join me for lunch tomorrow," replayed like a song he didn't know the lyrics to. Around him, employees whispered, curious eyes darting his way, but he barely noticed. His heart was still trying to understand why. The next day arrived slow and heavy. Elias polished the lobby floors twice, hands trembling more from nerves than exhaustion. When the clock hit noon, a voice came through the intercom. Receptionist. Mr. Elias, the owner will see you now. He swallowed hard, wiped his palms on his uniform, and made his way to the top floor, a place he'd only ever seen through the reflection of his mop water. The executive dining room felt like another world. Soft jazz humming from hidden speakers, linen that looked too clean to touch, and walls lined with gold-framed art. Whitlock sat by the window, sunlight tracing the edge of his suit. Whitlock. Warmly. "You came. I wasn't sure you would." Elias. "Didn't seem right to refuse the man who owns the building." Whitlock. Smiles. "I don't own everything in it. Not the things that matter." A waiter appeared with 2 plates. Steak for one, soup for the other. Elias stared, confused. Elias. "This looks expensive, sir. I can't." Whitlock. "It's the least I can do. You gave me something priceless." Elias frowned, unsure what he meant. Elias. "Sir, it was just a pair of shoes." Whitlock. "No," he said softly. "You gave me a reason to look at people again." They sat in silence for a moment, 2 men divided by wealth but united by wear. Whitlock lifted his glass slightly, eyes distant. "There's something you should know about me, Elias. Something that started long before that morning." The city outside shimmered in the noon light, the skyline rippling through the tall glass windows behind them. Whitlock's gaze lingered there for a moment before he spoke again, voice quieter now, stripped of its polished command. Whitlock. "I wasn't always the man in the suit, Elias. You know that, don't you?" Elias looked up, unsure how to respond. Elias. "I just saw a man without shoes." Whitlock, smiling faintly. "And you treated him like one?" He set down his glass, leaning back in his chair. The sharp edges in his posture softened. Whitlock. "A few years ago I lived 2 blocks from here, under the bridge near Monroe Street. I'd lost everything. My father's company, my home, my purpose. I was a son who disappointed a man I never really knew." Elias said nothing, only listened, his expression a mix of surprise and quiet understanding. Whitlock's hands rested on the table, manicured now, but a faint scar still ran across one palm, as if poverty had left its signature there. Whitlock. "That morning, when you gave me your shoes, I hadn't spoken to another human being in days. I'd stopped believing people saw me at all. But you did. You looked straight at me. Sometimes a stranger's kindness feels heavier than a fortune, because it demands nothing and remembers everything." Elias lowered his gaze, voice barely above a whisper. "Elias. I didn't do it to be remembered." Whitlock. "That's why you will be." Whitlock turned toward the window, eyes wet but steady. Whitlock. "You reminded me who I was before money forgot me." He exhaled slowly, then looked back at Elias with purpose. "It's time I return the favor." The room fell into a still, thoughtful quiet. Outside, sunlight washed the glass walls in gold, and distant city sounds felt muted, as though the world had paused to listen. Elias sat with his cap in his hands, fingers nervously twisting the brim. Elias. "Return the favor, sir?" Whitlock, gently. "You gave me more than warmth. You gave me a reminder that character doesn't wear price tags." Whitlock rose and walked to the window, hands clasped behind his back. His reflection merged with the skyline, power and humility blurring together. Whitlock. "When I took back control of this company, I made a promise to rebuild it around decency. But I can't do that with people who've never been cold, never been overlooked. I need someone who knows what it means to stand where no one claps." Elias looked down at his calloused hands, confusion and disbelief battling inside him. Elias. "Sir, I'm just a janitor. I don't belong in rooms like this." Whitlock, turning, smiling softly. "That's exactly why you do." He reached into his briefcase and placed an envelope on the table. Inside was an offer letter. Position: Supervisor of Facility Operations and Staff Ethics Liaison. Elias stared at it as though it might vanish. Elias, voice shaking. "Sir, I don't even own a suit." Whitlock, grinning. "Then we'll buy one. But I can't teach honesty, Elias. That's something you already wear better than anyone here." Some promotions don't come with applause. They come with trembling hands and a heart learning to believe again. Elias blinked back tears, whispering, "Elias, my daughter, she'll never believe this. Whitlock. Then bring her tomorrow. Let her see what happens when good men are finally seen." Elias clutched the letter to his chest, unaware that, down in the lobby, his old shoes were being placed in a glass case under a plaque that read, "Humanity." The next morning, the lobby gleamed brighter than usual. Fresh flowers stood near the reception desk, sunlight spilled across the marble, and whispers followed Elias wherever he walked. His uniform was pressed for the first time in years, and on his feet, the same shining leather shoes gifted in silence days before. He stopped near the elevator and froze. There, under a halo of soft light, stood a new glass display. Inside were his old taped shoes, the ones he had given away, the scuffed soles, the worn-out laces, the patches of duct tape, every flaw preserved with care. A bronze plaque beneath them read, "Humanity, for those who give when they have nothing left to give." Elias's throat tightened. He reached out, fingertips brushing the glass. Not every monument is made of marble. Some are made of memory and worn leather. Miguel approached slowly, holding a clipboard but looking at the case with awe. Miguel, softly, "That's yours, isn't it?" Elias, quietly, "No, it's everyone's who's ever been unseen." A small laugh escaped him, half disbelief, half gratitude. He stepped back, watching as employees stopped to read the plaque. People who once ignored him now nodded, smiled, even clapped his shoulder as they passed. Moments later, the glass elevator doors opened, and his daughter ran out, breathless with excitement. Her hair was tied with a pink ribbon, her school uniform neat. Daughter, beaming, "Daddy, Mr. Whitlock said I could visit." Elias crouched, gathering her into his arms, tears blurring the world. She noticed the shoes in the glass, tilting her head. Daughter, reading aloud, "Humanity. Daddy, that's your word?" Elias, smiling through tears, "No, sweetheart, that's our word." She took his hand and whispered, "You kept your promise. Now can we go see the soft grass?" The city faded behind them, replaced by the gentle hush of wind and the distant rustle of trees. Elias and his daughter stood at the edge of a small public park, sunlight flickering through the branches like a blessing. The morning was soft, the kind that smelled of dew and new beginnings. Elias took off his shoes, setting them neatly beside the bench. His daughter giggled and did the same, her bare feet pressing into the cool grass. Daughter, laughing, "It tickles." Elias, smiling, "That means it's real." They walked slowly, side by side, their footprints leaving faint trails on the damp green. In the distance, children played, dogs barked, and the world felt, for once, gentle. A breeze lifted the edges of Elias's shirt, and for the first time in years, his shoulders didn't slump under the weight of survival. The sunlight caught his face, revealing the quiet pride of a man who had lost everything and somehow found more. He once gave away his shoes and thought he'd lost comfort, but what he really gave away was fear, and what returned was freedom. His daughter bent down, picking a small yellow flower. She tucked it behind his ear, giggling. Daughter, "Now you look fancy, Daddy." Elias, laughing, "I think this suits me better than a tie." They reached a small hill where the grass met the sky. Elias looked back at the city skyline, tall, distant, and glinting in the sun. The same place that once ignored him, now carrying his story in its lobby. He squeezed his daughter's hand. Elias, softly, "We made it, sweetheart. Told you we'd walk on soft grass again." As the camera pulled back, the father and daughter shrank into the green horizon, their laughter echoing through the open air, and the narration whispered one last truth. The man who once gave away his shoes finally walked free.